whatever it is, wherever it is, at home or around the world. You see it here. You asked for it. And here's your host, Jack Smith.
Hi, friends. We're speaking to you from the heart of America's most exotic and exciting city, the birthplace of jazz, New Orleans. We're devoting our entire show to this Montmartre on the Mississippi, which is best known and most easily recognized by its famous French Quarter. This was the original colony, 90 square blocks in the heart of the city. The Quarter is both its historical heart and its honky-tonk haven. Buccaneers once walked here carrying cold steel. They were followed by men armed with hot brass, the giants of jazz, Jelly Roll Morton, Bunk Johnson, King Oliver, Papa Celestine, Louis Armstrong. Their lusty music had vitality, force, and drive. Well, we came to New Orleans, the birthplace of this purely American music, in answer to this request from Joe Stepner of Santa Monica, California, and here's what he writes. He says, I'm a jazz enthusiast, as are many of your other viewers, I'm sure, and to me it would be most thrilling if you took us to the cradle of jazz, the city of New Orleans, to see such sights as the real Bourbon Street and meet some of the unusual people of the jazz world.
Now for the answers to more of your requests, back to You Asked For It.
Oh, there isn't another city in the world like New Orleans. Jazz has influenced its people in every way. Even their funerals are different.
Listen at that day. Let it ride.
That's jazz. You can see the effect it has on the people who love it most. But really, what is jazz? How did it begin? Where did it come from? It's music that's not written down on paper. If it had been, the untutored musicians who were busy giving it birth couldn't have played it. Most jazz started as primitive improvisation. Did you ever hear a New Orleans Creole blackberry hawker?
Blackberries, 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 lady, 10 cents a glass, blackberries.
That's not jazz, but it's part of its beginning, and so was the chant of this banana vendor.
Baby, I got yellow bananas, 30 cents a dozen. Baby, get your yellow bananas, 30 cents a dozen.
And that's not jazz, but it's a kind of music, and so is this. Again, not jazz, but like jazz, it's something that is felt and just has to come out. Now, you probably never heard of ham bone. It's a method of expressing a feeling of rhythm by slapping the hands against the body. It's done mostly by kids who would like to be playing jazz, but can't afford the instruments.
Mama, mama, have you heard Papa gonna buy me a mockingbird? If that mockingbird don't sing, Papa gonna buy me a diamond ring. that diamond ring don't shine, Papa gonna buy me a glass of wine. If that glass of wine break, Papa gonna take me to the lake. Hammer, where you been? Been to the army and back again. Left my wife in New Orleans, 24 babies in a can of beans.
Still not jazz, but we're getting closer. Improvisation, that's the key word to remember when you're trying to figure out where jazz came from. Part of it came over from Africa, below decks in a slave ship. Once it got here, it was like New Orleans gumbo. Everything went into it. Basically, it's an expression of pure feeling. It's absolutely American, and it's always improvised, even if you have to make your own instruments, like this spasm band. Now, they're called a spasm band because they work so hard, it seems like they're having a fit or a spasm.
You asked for it, and here's Jack Smith.
They've tried to keep this wonderful old French Quarter as much like it was as possible, as nearly like it used to be over half a century ago when jazz began growing up. Well, even with all the trying, a lot of things have changed, and many of the famous old landmarks are gone. But if you wander around the ones that are still here and you listen real hard, maybe you'll hear a brassy horn way off and way out playing jazz. It could be a band somewhere practicing, or it could be a horn out of the past that refused to stop playing. Jazz, music with a driving, forceful beat that seems to get down inside of you. I guess you'll always be able to hear that kind of music here in New Orleans. The audacious, brassy sound seems to float right through the narrow streets to echo day and night from the balconied houses and to resound from the dim courtyards. Now, let's get to some of the people that live here. Ordinary people who have everyday jobs that they do, no different from people like themselves all over the country, except these people live in New Orleans. How do they feel about jazz? What effect did it have on their daily routine?
I'm Sergeant Nodier of the New Orleans Police Department. Bourbon Street is just one of the streets that I patrol during my tour of duty. The music I hear coming from the various clubs as I ride by is just typical New Orleans. If I were anywhere else in the world, blindfolded and brought back here and taken down Bourbon Street, I would know that I was back in New Orleans just by the music.
I've been in New Orleans 20 years, but the jazz in New Orleans ain't like it used to be. It's not got the spirit and the fire it used to have, like it used to be. I like that old jazz 20 years ago.
My name is Vincent Robinson. I am glad I live in New Orleans because someday I'd like to be a drummer. Here I hear music all the time. Jazz is my favorite because it comes from hymns. God gave us hymns for everyone to sing and jazz for everyone to hear.
When the sun goes down, the moon comes out, that's when they begin to shout. Remember that song? Well, actually, the words to that old song here on Bourbon Street should be changed to when the sun goes down and the bands come out. Because at night, along these 9 blocks of closely crammed nightclubs, music is king. And people come to the Crescent City from all over the world to hear jazz as it is in New Orleans today.
about singing a number with us, Jack?
Sure. What'll we do?
Let's do Basin Street.
Won't you come along with me to the Mississippi? We'll take a boat to the land of dreams, steam down that river down to New Orleans. Well, the band's there to meet us, old friends to greet us, where you meet the real elite. Heaven on earth, they call it Basin Street. Basin Street is the street where they live, always be down in New Orleans, land of dreams. You'll never know how nice it seems or just how much it really means. Glad to be, yes, sirree, where welcome is free, dear to me, where I can lose my basin blues. Never know how nice it seems or just how much it really means. Glad to be, yes, sirree, where welcome is free, dear to me, where I can lose my Basin Street blues. Everybody wants to lose those blues. They can't use the Basin Street
Here's Jack Smith, and You Asked for It.
On the outskirts of New Orleans is this Milne boys' home. Way back around the turn of the century, it was known as the Waifs' home. Well, we're here because of something that happened back on New Year's Eve in 1913. Seems a young colored boy, anxious to celebrate the new year in as loud a way as possible, selected as his noisemaker an old pistol that he found in his father's trunk. Well, it seems he was arrested, although he was shooting blanks because he had the gun and sent here to the home. Well, this reasonably innocent prank turned out to be a blessing for this 13-year-old boy and for jazz music. You see, the boy's name was Daniel Louis Armstrong, known affectionately all over the world as Satchmo. Well, today he's more than just the king of jazz. He's America's ambassador with a horn. It all started because he was sent to this home. It was right here that Louis Armstrong learned to play his internationally famous trumpet. Well, the man who teaches the boys' home band today is the very same man who taught the boys' home band back in 1913. His name is Peter Davis. It was in a band like this where Satchmo got his start almost 50 years ago.
As I played the cornet at rehearsing for the band's parade, as I laid the horn down, Louis would grab it and begin to wobble around with it. I'd ask him, what are you trying to do? And he'd blow on the horn, making such beautiful tones. I'd then repeat, well, if you can make such a wonderful tune, you ought to be able to play it.
Jane's Alley, called the battleground because of the brawls and knifings. Here, Louis Armstrong was born July 4th, 1900. Louis went to school long enough to learn to read and write, but the streets of New Orleans were calling him constantly because there he found jazz. While Louis Armstrong was at the Waifs' home, and even after he left, he regarded Captain and Mrs. Jones, the people in charge of the home, as his second mother and father. Mrs. Jones still prizes Louis's first trumpet.
This is the first horn that Louis Armstrong ever owned. We did not have much money, but we are proud of encouraging him. All America is proud of him and his wonderful music.
Well, the simple emotional impact of jazz has cut through all kinds of barriers. Louis Armstrong has become an extraordinary kind of roving ambassador of goodwill. You might say he's America's ambassador with a horn. You know, you can't possibly tell the story of jazz in a half hour. It's too big and it's taken too many years to unfold. It all started, though, right here in New Orleans, just about the same time Satchmo was born. And, like him, it's known and loved in every corner of this earth. The same city gave them birth. They both started in the most humble way possible. And yet, today, Louis is the king and jazz has the world tapping its feet in that driving beat. You know, it seems like it's here to stay, too. I guess that as long as there's such a thing as a trumpet and a trombone, some kid somewhere is going to come along and pick it up and play jazz just the way Satchmo did a long time ago. Been a real pleasure having you with us. Good night from New Orleans. We'll see you all next week.